Hi Decoders, Leela here. This week we are working hard in the studio on a really substantial piece of conversation. I'm not going to give away about what it is yet, but we thought it's really helpful for you guys to listen to this conversation about willingness, before you get into the substantial, important, big piece we're airing next week. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Kiran Trace. Welcome to Humans Decoded, a story of hobbits, fairies, elves, dwarfs, gnomes, and humans. If you get lost at any point, there is a deep dive on all the different avatars in episode 1. It includes notes. Thank you for joining us in a fun little chat about the vast potential of our human makeup. Hi, Cami. Hi, Leela.
Hey.
Hi.
I'm so happy we're talking about willingness this week, in part because it feels like such a delicious continuation from our chat about exposure last week, but also because it's such an integral practice. It's a life-changing tool, and we throw this word around a lot, but inside of our practice, it's so key.
The word is willingness. Willingness. It's such an obvious word. I think we all know it, but how it's the actual key to everything and the depth of it is really fun to explore with you guys, because the three of us are in any given day in relationship to that.
For sure. And, I don't want to come in with an agenda here, but last week's episode about exposure versus indulgence, it stayed with me throughout the whole week, and I got so much out of it. So I'm kind of hoping to get the same from that episode. Because, as Kiran is saying, willingness is key. It's the key to everything.
People hate it so much when I say that. People will be like, if I have to hear this one more freaking time, I'm just it's always a fight, ironically. It's like, give me some other tool. Don't let it be that the problem I'm having in the moment is just about willingness, give me a tool, give me a hack, give me something to do. Tell me what to not do, tell me what to let go of, but don't tell me it's about willingness, because
I mean, that one it's so offensive to the pain body. It's so offensive to the little you that feels like it's on me. And it's saying I'm trying so hard. Haven't I done enough already? How can you give me more to do, in a way? But that's not the actual willingness we're cracking open here.
Yeah, and willingness is absolutely the key, but it's so subtle, it's so easy to miss until it's there, and then it's so obvious. How could I have missed it this whole time?
I think that's why it's so offensive, is that it's so obvious, and then we have this shame that we miss it. It's just like Leela was saying, I've been trying. Haven't I done enough? I'm trying. And then it's sort of this shamefulness to realize oh, the one thing I wasn't doing was this willingness. Because willingness has everything to do with open hands, and trying has everything to do with a grip.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, talking about shame and actual open-handedness, I mean, it's a little embarrassing to expose it here, but I just recently actually looked at this pain body of mine that we call Princess. And it's sort of a layer of, she's a spoiled brat. She's self-centered. She behaves really stupidly and sometimes recklessly. She supports my other girl, the fainting girl. You've heard of her in previous episodes. And, I would say, I've been looking at her. I see her, but I haven't actually. So it's just this week that I truly turned around and saw her, and yeah, I was shocked. There's definitely a layer of shame on top of that one, because who wants to be this egocentrical princess, spoiled brat, kind of Marie Antoinette princess thing? It's, I mean, even saying it right here, it's it's turning my guts.
Right? And that's the thing. It's so hard to be willing to look. But each of us have these grimy little gremlins. like why are we surprised? We've been here lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Like, we've been witches, we've been the Inquisition. I mean, you're in la if you don't think you don't have those little gremlins playing. And that, and at the heart of it, like the willingness, when we open our hands and are willing to look, right there is that Marie Antoinette, like, honestly, people love her. Very few people know her husband's name or even her children's name, but they know her because of that pastoral sweetness she was searching for. She so longed for this different life than what she had. And as a result, she had to pay. And then, I think there's a ton of compassion. I think there is a ton of compassion. And that's kind of a point, is like compassion to yourself, compassion and compassion and compassion. When we have our little gremlins, and the willingness is going to skirt you through.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so close to exposure. Like, this kind of shame layer makes it feel like you don't want to let go. And that's often what gets in the way of willingness. I had a moment just last week where I found myself in a lot of resistance. And there was definitely the temptation to just spiral into distraction and just be like, I'm just going to do whatever I want because this is really hard. But then just with that little pinch of like, okay, it just like a little sprinkle of willingness meant that I could slow down enough and be like, okay, actually, what do we want right now? And it's to find what's delicious in this moment. So I reached out to a friend for support, and we had a little chat. And then I was like, you know what? I just want to go to this shop where there's paint, and it's in the other side of town, but I don't know why I want to go there, but that's the thing I want to do. And just taking the time to like expose that meant that I felt free to go on my little journey. And it was just the most delightful, sweetest day. I ended up bumping into a friend. It turned out it was right next to other shops I needed to go to. Like, none of this was in my plans, but it was such a delight. And that was the difference between, like, I had the choice to either just keep going with the resistance or just sort of pause enough to like feel into the moment what's actually true. And then that opened the rest of the day up.
And it's wonderful if you already have that sort of space between you and the pain body to, I don't know, even be able to ask the question, what's true here? Because sometimes these pain bodies are so deep down in a way that it feels like that is me. For example, this princess thing, I haven't seen her because she's been so embedded. And then I couldn't, you can't push that out. You can't push the let go when there's such a big part of you that's still in approval of it. But then it's sort of the continuous willingness, or just the continuous leaning back into the moment, that eventually allows for that too to come up to the light and, be seen and loved and compassionately held.
We talk about this all the time in the podcast, right? We all have our baggage. We all have our stuff, these belief systems. We like to call them pain bodies. Eckhart Tolle's really beautiful term. And what we're looking at is that there's this like intense, like, this is me identification. And we think it's part of ourselves. And we don't see that it's resistance. We hold the story. I mean, for goodness sakes, 5 years ago, I ended up buying a farm. I thought it was an integral part of my personality, but it was pure resistance. If I had to do it over, I would never buy the farm. There was no willingness. It wasn't available.
I have a sort of sticky spot, which I'm gonna share with you, but it's like it's still hot. My portrait got accepted into this like wonderful exhibition, and there's an opening night. There's going to be press. It's going to be at the National Gallery in London. But I realized that actually I want to go to retreat in California with these beauties and all of you wonderful community who are joining us. And it's been a journey trying to just hear like what's true and what the delicious is. And there's so many voices that cloud that exploration because they're like, we worked so hard for this. Like, this is your one party. I don't want to let this go. It's me. It's mine.
Right. I mean, our stories are dense. And without any willingness, they play as if they're true. Like the story, but like it's one night. Are you kidding? This is going to go on for weeks and weeks. The events of, this enormous recognition of your portrait in the National Gallery.
It's actually going on from July until October. It might have another run in Scotland as well. But to me, my pain body is like, this one night and I'm totally going to lose out. Well, those voices are playing out so loud. It's hard to be honest about the true desire, which for me is just to be with God, which means to be with reality, to be what's true. Like that's just the most delicious exploration. And that's where my being wants to be, despite all the voices that are like, you fool, how could you miss the ultimate party?
I think the voices you're hearing in your head about this missing the party is the same thing that people hear all the time in relationship, right? Like, I can't leave this relationship. This is the party. Like I worked so hard. I'm going to lose out. I will never find a person again. Even though, like, if they just open their hands for a second, just a little drop of willingness, like some sprinkle of willingness, they could see the relationship isn't working. It's not it. Willingness doesn't come from you. Like, it's not like you are going to be willing or you have to be willing. The great news is that it just is right here in the present moment. So it's just an energy. Like, even as you're listening to my voice right now, there's a whole vibe to this moment that's separate from your story. The story running in your head, the story running through your body, the emotional states that are running inside of you are not the same as this sort of consistent peace, frankly, that's just right here in the moment. And anytime we sort of allow ourselves the simplicity of the moment, which is just, the bird song or the feeling of air on your skin, just the moment without the story, suddenly there's something very open that can be felt. And that is willingness. If I could harness the openness and bottle it for you and then say, drink me, that's what willingness is. And it's always consistently there. It's never going to go away.
It's so funny because I can just feel myself melting into the present and it's the most delicious thing in the world. And but if you ask my pain body, it's like, no, I don't want to come to the present. Yuck.
And, but that's the ironic thing, right? Because that openness is actually going to open your hand. And then possibilities can come in. When you're running your story, there's no room for a possibility. There's no room for the moment. But it is this willingness, this openness that exists in the present moment that will unhook your grip. But you keep hearing that you have to do it. I will say 100 times, you do not get willing. The moment is willing. Go into the moment and feel that openness. And I'll say it 100 times. And every time I say, you cannot be willing, everybody hears it as, I have to be willing. I don't know what the gap is. I don't know what goes on there, but it just blanks out and it just gets heard as, I have to be willing. I'm not willing enough. I'm not doing the willing enough.
For sure.
I think to the pain body, it's so disorienting to not have anything to do or anything to reference. So if you have to go to the moment, the pain body just freaks out because it always wants something to do, something to hold on, something to grab onto. So when it's like, no, just not the pain body entirely, like the moment, then the pain body's like, but you're taking this away from me. Like, it's the one thing I have, this like thing to do. Like, let me keep it.
Yeah, it's losing its point of reference, isn't it? Like, as long as it has something to do, it can refer back to itself. And if it's just a moment and you're just, yeah, then that's lost. So ultimately, this whole thing also just boils down to present in this moment.
Yeah, it boils down to the fact if you're not getting results, there's only literally one reason. But you don't want me to tell you that.
No.
But it is that simple, and it doesn't matter what the results is. Like, maybe you want to quit smoking, or you want to be nicer to your partner, or, whatever it is. I don't know, you want to lose weight or start a new program. The key is willingness. If you're not getting results, it's about willingness. I think of this old koan where there's this razor's edge. It's very, very thin. This razor, and on one side of the razor's edge is hell. And on the other side of the razor's edge is heaven. But man, it's so, so, so thin. The distance, like it's sort of get from one end to the other is willingness. That's it, because it's so, so tiny. It just needs this tiny, tiny little sprinkle of openness to take you from one side to the other. And this is not me I don't want to downgrade any real trauma. Like, children are being abused and starvation exists and coral reefs are dying. And it's not to say that this isn't happening and it's important and it's big. It's to say that what you're seeing happening is a reflection in the mirror. And I don't say that to make it less than or to make it any less painful. I know it. I know how painful it is. But what we need here is the mirror to change. And that doesn't change because you go and do something about it. It has to do with leaning into that awareness, right? Coming into the present moment, opening the hand and not knowing. And that's a very big thing to let go of. It's incredibly challenging to let go of your story of what's occurring, especially in the middle of the trauma. But ironically, when people are brought to their knees, they let go. They have to let go. And you let go and the field comes in. The field comes in. And the story of the moment, the story of the present moment arises, and it mirrors differently. And you find a way out. So whether you're walking down this lovely street, looking for paint and other lovely, wonderful things, or you're in the middle of a Thai prison, to release the story isn't something you're going to do. It's something that the moment will do if you allow yourself the present to be present if you allow yourself to open your hands.
Yeah. And the difference between the moment kind of guiding your life and this sort of sticky U grip is night and day. And I can say, this also feels like a confession, decoders, but yeah, over the last few months, there's just been so much Lala in my in my life, which is a kind of avoidance. But it was just playing very loudly, and I kind of went with it a lot. And now it's some stuff is being cleared and seen through, and what I'm finding now is just a new swathe of willingness kind of washing in, which just makes me a lot more available to the moment. And it's just such a better win, like, to kind of be honest with what the moment is doing and choosing that. It's just always so much more fulfilling.
I remember one time I was sitting with the great, incredible teacher, Ajashanti, and he was talking about just like being so open-handed, like being so available to letting go of things. And he does it in his beautiful way. I think of it as like a jazz concert when you listen to him speak. Or, he sort of starts off in one direction and throws a few beats in from other places and la la la, and eventually gets back to a really poignant message. I love the talk. And later I was sitting with him and I said, Ajay, I got to tell you, like, I actually know, like you did this gorgeous talk about not knowing, and I totally hear you, but I know. And he was like, yeah, isn't it shocking how much you start to know when you're so open, when there's no story at all? Like, and that's like, it harkens in a way to this favorite compliment I have, initiated from Leela, of just like, Kiran, you're just such a nobody. You're like the biggest nobody I know. It's like, I love that so much. It's about the open-handedness. It's about the, like, for me, I've had many, many, many experiences of fairly intense trauma. And to not cling to the story of trauma, to not even cling to the story of what's happening, like to literally be open-handed is how you get all the way through. It's how an event that seems to be headed in one direction changes direction and actually cracks you open, and actually fundamentally frees you. Like, you think it's going to be the story of less and trauma and challenge, and it ends up being a story of ultimate freedom. But you got to be willing, people. You got to be willing. And gosh, like, I don't hold a story for anything. Like, you can't believe how much I don't know. Like, if I get up, I'll get up to do something, and by the time I step up from my chair, I literally don't remember what I was doing. But it doesn't make me stall or stop or have bad executive functioning. In fact, the opposite is true, because I don't know, because I'm not going to hold my story, because I'm willing to be open to the openness of the moment. The moment guides me and takes me places. And then, I don't know, this weekend, out I go into the world, and there's strawberries and daisies and all kinds of interesting interactions. And it's all sort of arises and then rinses clear, and arises and rinses clear. Now, this may not be where you are at, but it's just an invitation for you to notice if you are headed in a direction and the results aren't occurring at its heart, is because you're not willing to, there's a willingness to find the openness for you in the moment.
So beautiful to hear your examples of how the moment moves you. You don't necessarily have to do the movement. And just this profound absence of stories It's like reminding me of, you know, it would have been so easy to keep holding on to this story of my partner at the time committing suicide. It's almost 10 years now. And it was years and years and years to just sit in the moment itself, to see and sift through that story, to let that story go, to not be the one who's suffering, who's like the suffering widow because, the suicide of her partner. um, which isn't, again, it's not to make fun of myself back then, but it's, it's just this story. It's not necessary. It's not true ultimately. And, it was to go back to my apartment where we both lived. And then I started to sort of redo the bathroom. I painted the whole flat. I painted the kitchen cupboards and I made it my own. And it was such a, I don't know, it was almost like I was on my belly in the mud like a soldier, just making my way through the mud of my story and my pain and my intense fucking PTSD trauma stuff. But I painted the cupboards of my kitchen and I went out into the world with like all these panic attacks in the train, in the tram, in the stores. Gosh, it was a battlefield. And for these first couple of months, or even the first year, the only place where I could find refuge, where I found some rest, was silence, or what I knew as silence back then. I don't think I would still call it silence now, but just to rest for even a breath. And at the time, it seemed quite easy because it was so much more okay to just sit and meditate than to be in the mud in my battlefield with my trauma. And then, after 1 year, I would go back to work. I worked at a bar at the time, just maybe one night a week. And it was around the first year anniversary of that death. And I remember Kiran telling me, like, write on your arms with this permanent felt marker, really big, bold letters, I am love, I am life. And that's how I went to work, just to not forget what's true, and to keep seeing through and sifting through that story and not hold on to it. Because, it's a compelling story. Even now, sometimes there's a whiff of like a little grip onto that story.
Trauma is a very compelling story. It comes with so many intense energy signatures like shame, and terror and humiliation and horror and these very loud energy signatures. And because they're so loud, it's so convincing.
And also because most of the world is in approval of that story. Like, I'm remembering how my therapist at the time, she was feeding the story. She would like take me back to the event where the suicide was back to the place where the suicide was happening in order to heal my trauma. So inappropriate. Like, not even after a year, he died. So to stay in truth and not keep feeding the story is not super common, I find. And it's also tempting to use these stories as an excuse. Like, it makes for a wonderful excuse for shitty behavior to say, oh, my partner just died or my dad just died. I'm allowed to do X, Y, Z.
I think when you're in the middle of a journey, sometimes you're just not ready to open your hands. You're just not ready to go into the present moment. You're just not willing. You're on the razor's edge and you're living in the hellscape, and even though you know that it's so, so thin to turn it into heaven, it's so thin. It's just the awareness in this moment. Look for the openness, and then stay there because it will put up underfoot ways for you to stay in heaven. But ironically, we need to stay in hell for a moment. Sometimes we really have to harvest the hell. And life isn't pressuring you to get over to the other side of the knife's edge. Recently, I was noticing that there's an American movie star named Jeremy Reimer. He does all the big, adventure movies and things. In this terrible, terrible accident in 2023, he cracked his head open. Enormous truck rolled over him, broke like almost every bone in his body.
Wow.
Huge. That happened in 2023. And obviously, here we are recording in 2025. And he's out on a book tour about that accident. And that's ridiculous, right? Like, that's another type of of what you're saying, Leela. Like, you're you're sitting there in the mud of your story, soldiering through to just try to find that present moment, right? Just to let go of it, right? And here's the flip side, but it's the same thing. This is a guy who's just going to avoid the moment altogether. I mean, to be able to write a real book about that situation with any real reflection, we're talking about 10 or 15 years after. Christ, it takes 2 years to even write that book. Let alone, let alone the amount of years it's going to take, which, I'm going to say it's going to take, 10 years, like you're saying, Leela, to get all the way through to the other side, to recognize your story about it wasn't your story about it. What happened it flips on you. It didn't happen. And for it to be the thing that just closed your life, to be the thing that opened your life, the pushing through is not willingness at all.
Mm-hmm. And I see many, many examples like him, like this, just trying to fast forward to the place of I'm healed within a year or two max.
Yeah. I'm healed. I'm free. I cannot linger.
Yeah. I did the shadow work. I'm done.
Yeah. I'm done. I did the shadow work. Listen, I took 15 hours or 200 hours.
Enlightened.
I can't. Yeah.
Sorry.
I can't have an organic moment. I need to push into the next instead of the willingness to let life integrate that. Let life do the process. You just shut the door instead. Just shut the door and walk out. I'm not going to let life put up any of this, right? I have a bad relationship. I left the relationship. I closed the door. I'm on to the new one. It's going to come back for you. But I'm trying. Kiran, I wrote a book. I went back to work. I'm trying.
Yeah, but folks, that's not actual heaven. If you do want the actual experience of heaven, which is right here, it's right now, it's happening. If you do want to go full circle with your stuff, you need to be here in this moment, willing and open-handed, and then life is dissolving. It's life who's doing the dissolving and the looking and the sifting through. You don't have to do that either. And I mean, it's incredibly courageous to let go that much, isn't it? Because if I keep holding on to the story, for example, I'm a yoga teacher and I live in Zurich and I have all these cool kids that are my friends, it's very limiting. And there's not much room for life to ripen the true seeds and grow the harvest, which is so different from, the story of what my unworthy would have written for my life.
I wouldn't have written myself into a podcast. That required some letting go.
Yeah, here you are. Being amazing.
Yeah, I remember when Kiran first started talking about willingness, and the first time I encountered it, it felt a lot like trying to lick your own elbow. Like, it feels like just like, what? I'm trying, but I don't get it. And then the first time it appeared, almost like those 3D sort of puzzles that you look at and then suddenly like a form emerges. And it's so funny. It's the most obvious thing because it's here. Yeah. It's here, and yet it still eludes me, so it's like, it's a sometimes minute by minute practice to keep going back to the moment. But I am grateful that there's enough, there's been like enough of a felt sense of it, and it's just such a bottomless resource. It's like, there's just the well of it. You can never not have it. So I think knowing that is enormously helpful. But it's an ongoing practice. And at the same time, it's like, it's so easy. Sorry. At the same time, it's so simple.
For sure, ongoing practice. And I like what you're saying about the felt sensed experience of it, because then it's like, oh, willingness is actually tremendous freedom. I'm not a slave to my own stories. And the recent example for me is I broke up, or me and my lover of about 3 years, we broke up mutually. And the story would have been, oh my God, it's going to be so awful, and the heartbreak and blah, blah, blah. Probably we have to talk for a long time about this. But the experience is, no, it's completely fine. The moment is still peace. The moment is still wonderful and lovely. And it's like, yeah, it's odd to say this, but it's like this relationship doesn't leave a trace, because it's just life, because the moment hasn't changed, whether or not that relationship is here or not.
Right. So if you suspect you're not in alignment, or you're not getting the results you want, or the thing you want so much isn't happening, the solution isn't to push yourself into it. Go make it happen. Try. He who works the hardest gets the best results, or some shit like that. The solution is just to open your hands. And sometimes it takes so much compassion. And compassion, if you're just not ready to do it, you need to linger in hell. That's okay. Compassion. Because it's going to hurt to linger in hell. But sometimes we just need to hurt a little bit before we recognize, oh, shoot, it's so thin, the distance between heaven and hell. It's so thin. And it's just about letting go of this story, which is just about a sprinkle or two of willingness.
So, speaking of hurting, Kiran, how are your injuries?
The catch-up moment. Yes. All of you guys, decoders, we got lots of lovely notes and stuff. Thank you for the love. People checking in on me. Since the fall, there's been a lot of good healing. Quite quickly, my ankle and knee and leg got better. My hip, my shoulder's taken a minute, but it's considerably better, with a beautiful amount of range of motion. I have great health care. And I have a very funny setup to record these podcasts. It's kind of, there's kind of like lots of boxes and pillows and things like that. So, we're doing our best over here, but things are definitely looking up for me.
Great. Thanks for catching us up.
Love you, decoders. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. We obviously love hearing what you think. Your feedback helps us make a better show for you to listen to. So feel free to comment, and you can do it at Facebook, which is the Humans Decoded podcast. And if you're not on social, you can always email any questions to us at outreach@kirantrace.com. And thanks for listening. We love you.